Let's talk about this story. I mean, these things get my goat, they really do. But about unisex toilets. I don't like unisex toilets in a nightclub. I don't want them in a restaurant. I definitely don't want them in a school. It's one of the things that only has really come about because of an urge for trans rights, so that a trans woman or a trans man wouldn't be seen to be going into, quote, the wrong toilet and they wouldn't be challenged. Well, what a surprise. Funnily enough, men, women, boys, girls don't like these toilets. I don't know anyone calling out for these things, but extraordinary story that's come out of a Caludon Castle School in Wicken in Coventry has told you exactly why these things shouldn't happen. A schoolgirl at that school was in the unisex loos. She was sitting there in a cubicle going to the loo, at which point a male classmate allegedly kicked the cubicle door in so he could take a photo of her on the loo. Of course, it was perfectly acceptable for him to be in that girl's loo because it was a unisex loo. So he was entitled to be there. He was described as having donkey kicked the cubicle door, which of course then hit her and she actually sustained injuries and had to be taken to hospital, leaving her with a large cut on her forehead. The mother of this 13-year-old girl, Gemma Brennan, says the unisex loos are an ongoing issue at the school. She said there are unisex toilets. The boys go in and take photos of the girls, kick the doors down. There are no locks on the doors. What? So they're going over to the cubicles to take photos and videos, which is a massive concern. The school has now written a letter to reassure parents after this so-called distressing incident. Well, I'll tell you what, it's certainly distressing to me, and I imagine also to Stephanie Davies-Arai. She's founder and director of Transgender Trend. It's an organisation set up to help parents of children who want to transition. Good morning to you, Stephanie.
Morning.
I mean, imagine how surprised this is happening, eh?
Yeah, we're not surprised at all. It's predictable that girls will suffer if toilets are mixed sex, and boys as well. There are lots of boys. I mean, the boys here have behaved appallingly, the boy in this case allegedly. So that's the reason we separate toilets by sex.
It's almost like there was a reason for it, yeah.
Well, there are some boys who will behave like that and some boys whose behaviour will be less than that, but they will still be making fun of girls or trying to listen to girls or embarrass girls and have a bit of fun. They're teenage boys. Some of that behaviour is worse than others. But we separate toilets on the basis of sex. We don't separate them on the basis of children's feelings or gender identity or any of these other labels, for very, very good reasons, for privacy, for both sexes, but for the safety of girls, because girls can be filmed, girls can be harassed in toilets. They need that private space. They need it for biological reasons.
But especially as teenagers, we know the raging hormones on both sides. I mean, also, let's face it, men, in the loos, men largely are using urinals. I don't want my teenage daughter, if she was at that school, having to walk past a boy with his penis out. I mean, again, call me old-fashioned, but also girls starting their periods. And I don't know why, but people engender this in their girls, but being ashamed in any way or embarrassed about their period, being able to call out, well, does anyone have a tampon or a sanitary towel? You wouldn't want to do that if there were boys there and have everyone discussing your menstrual cycle in the classroom afterwards. It's so obvious to 99% of people why we have had this separation. I'm a 5'11", 54-year-old woman who's got great confidence. On occasion, when there's a very large queue for the ladies and no queue for the men's, I've quite happily gone into the men's going, sorry, not looking, but I'm not queuing for half an hour to use the loo in a public place. But, the difference is I'm not going to go in and be a physical threat to any of the men in there. And I certainly feel I don't want to make people uncomfortable, but I also think we should have more female toilets. But the idea that the teenage girls, 11-year-old girls, want to be in the same toilet as like a 16-year-old boy, sorry, that's crazy. Who are the people who thought this was a good idea? And should any of those people be in charge of a school?
No, because I think that safeguarding has been thrown out of the window, and it's because, toilets have always been based on sex because there are biological differences between boys and girls, but nobody's allowed to say that anymore. And so schools have absolved themselves of responsibility for safeguarding in order to protect some sort of adult movement for gender identity. And I think that is a complete dereliction of duty of safeguarding towards children, and particularly, of course, towards girls.
Yeah.
You know, schools need to, I mean, and the Department for Education needs to stand up and say, facilities are separated on the basis of sex for very good reason. Those reasons have not gone away. In fact, they've got worse because of camera phones. The threats for girls are worse now. There's even more reason to segregate.
And can I just say, any school that has any of their pupils allowed to have their phone during the day, you need to get your kid out of anyway. That should be a simple one. Your phone goes in your locker, your bag. Your phone is out at any point during the day, in the school day. That should be an instant suspension. We've got to start parenting kids better and having rules for these youngsters and taking control of this. I just find it absolutely extraordinary we've got into such a mess. And it's really important that parents speak up as well. Parents need to say right now, you know, my child is not going to school while they're unisex toilets. This is unsafe.
It seems there's been a reversal of roles between adult and child. The adults are tiptoeing around children and their feelings and their identities. And actually what all of these children need, whether they are identifying as trans or non-binary or any number of identities now, it doesn't matter. They still need adults to be adults, and they will still feel safer and happier if adults stand up and be adults.
Absolutely. Well, it's an old-fashioned idea. We know better.
It's boundaries.
Exactly, completely.
Boundaries.
Stephanie, you're speaking for so many parents. Stephanie Davies-Arai from Transgender Trend, thank you for that.